What's up, everyone, and welcome to Minecraft One Day at a Time with me, your certified bumbling, brainless Bonehead. Now, I am certified bumbling and brainless because I am actually recording the audio for this day 16 after the fact, because I did not somehow have... I tested it, I was pretty sure it was on, but OBS did not have a selected input recording. And unfortunately, I can't get the footage back, so we're stuck with a little voiceover as I watch through my video. Now, on this day, I made a decision on the roof, following up with day 15. We stopped that one early because I wasn't sure about the roof on New House. And I made a decision to go for having it be the 1 block tall, but to lessen the slope so it wasn't so drastic by having each bit be 2 blocks before it went up by a half a block. And we decided to get to work on that. So, let's see. Now the issue that of course we're going to run into is that we only have so much copper. And with only so much copper means only so much roofage. So you can see we're actually heading down to Tiny House, check our storage, and we're finding that we have no more copper except for what's in the furnace right there. And so we take that out and we're gonna go ahead and craft it up into the blocks and the slabs that we need for the roof. But it's just, I can tell you already, it's not going to be enough. So the goal for the day shifts a little bit. So I try to stick to what the primary goal is and work until that one's done. But sometimes we have to change things up a little bit. And so the goal becomes, instead of finishing the roof, is going to become getting enough copper to finish the roof. And so, as you can see, we're doing some editations here, and ouch, on what the roof, to make the roof what it's going to be. And one thing this is going to do is actually shorten the entryway just a little bit, but that's fine because we're going to add in some fun elevation shifts into other rooms when we get to building other rooms. So, yep. So you can see we've got this this little bit here where I'm digging. It's just a little too high, so we've got to fix that to match up with how we're going to do the rest of the roof, and make sure that it fills in properly. And one thing that I didn't do this week, but I might do later, is actually put in a ceiling in order to sort of keep the interior looking good. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Just some thoughts I'm having after the fact. Now, let's see here. We keep it going, and yep, and this is the check where I check and see how it's looking. And unfortunately, it's hard to tell at this point because the left side is still very what it was before, and the wood needs to be brought down a good bit to finish it off. So I of course have to take care of that, and we've got to get this side all repaired up for what it's going to be properly. I actually dropped down there to just make sure that I've got everything being placed down at the right level. And for some reason, I decided to strip this, and I think it's because of my hardcore series. In the bunker, which is also spruce and copper, I'm trying to keep the copper orange in that one. But for this one, for this world, I actually want it to turn teal. So I kind of laughed at myself as to why the heck did I do that. But, you know, I remembered later on that to leave it alone, let it oxidize. So now's the point about where I run out of copper. And so I have to stop, and I'm making sure that everything's lined up and that I know where the center is going to be. I make the mistake at first of not realizing that the left side, if you're facing the front of the house, is not the same height as the right. And it makes me think for a minute that I'm going to have just a one block in the middle that's higher. But I realized pretty quickly that that was bad math, and that it's actually going to be a 3-block section in the center, which is right about perfect. So, now that we're getting a better view of things, we take a step back and we start to go copper mining. And we spend about the rest of the day down in the caves for a couple of reasons. You'll see that, well, if you could hear my reactions in the moment, it's kind of funny. One, I know I need a lot of copper, and I need some coal to be able to run the furnace. But also, I start to find a lot of iron, and I get a little greedy. So we wind up spending a good chunk of time down here. And of course, we start at the entrance area, because I know I haven't really messed with this area a lot, and there's lots of coal and copper that I left when I was hunting for iron specifically. So this means there's a lot real close to the entrance that I can grab, but just in my head and in my heart, I know it's not going to be enough, and we have to go deeper. But now in this little bit, I think it was part of that same blob, but it looked separate. It was a little disappointing. It was just the two of them. I was hoping for a lot more copper in that spot. We bring it up here towards the entrance because I see some coal over here. And there was also a moment as I dropped down that I got worried that I only had 3 torches. And then when I opened up my inventory, it took me a second to see that I had a full stack sitting in there on top of the 3. So having a stack in 3 was actually a good amount, because I came out of the cave with probably 4 or 5 torches left, if I remember correctly. So, grab our coal, and we start heading down, because it is time to get more copper. And the nice thing is, this is a fairly high up cave, so turns out there's lots of copper to be had nearby. Also had this friend come and try and give me a hug, but I was in a no hugs mood, so we had to put a restraining order on that zombie because he wouldn't take no for an answer. A restraining order with a stone sword, that is. And yeah. And while we're down here, I think when I was doing my initial narration it was a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and get into it. I gave a bit of a story time. And it was a bit of a story time surrounding Bonehead. And that's right, but well, because you say, well, but you're Bonehead. Well, yes and no. You might be surprised to discover that there are multiple Boneheads. There are 2. Specifically, we look exactly the same. We have the brown leather jacket and the scarf and the blue pants. We both have no brain, but you see, you have the Bonehead that is me, and he's the expressive Bonehead that you see popping up in videos. He's the avatar. He's this voice, right? That's Bonehead. But if you're a longtime subscriber of this channel, you probably remember that, because this was an on and off project that happened a lot on and off while I was in university and I was working towards my degree. You know, I was always trying to work on this, but it just wouldn't pan out. It was very difficult to work on while being in school at the same time and having children. And so it just kind of stopped for a while. But I did it. I worked on this channel with a different name. The channel was called Mergi Mani Sate, which comes from the year I lived in Panama. And it's a native dialect from Panama called Dulagaya that translates to, the Mergi Mani Sate is 3 words that translates to, Mergi means like white person or gringo, right? Mani is money, and Sate means nothing. So what it roughly translates to is the white guy does not have money. And that was my tag, my YouTube handle. That was my persona, was Mergi Mani Sate. And that proved to be difficult for people to search, to spell, to pronounce. And then came an issue of, I decided to redraw my avatar because I studied art. I'm an artist. And so I wanted to redraw my YouTube avatar. Well, my artist avatar. At the time I was focusing primarily on my Instagram and stuff. And it was supposed to look like me in real life, but with the color scheme of basically everything's in pure white, except for a light blue tie that I wore. But because it was supposed to look like me, for some reason, I wasn't happy with it, and I wasn't happy with it, and I wasn't happy with it. And I get the suggestion from one of my friends, why don't you rebrand yourself as Bonehead? And I'll tell you why they suggested this. Bonehead, now we're getting back to the meat of the story. Bonehead started off actually as a character that I had come up with. He was supposed to be a joke character. The idea was, haha, funny, he has no brain. So we can put him in situations, and of course he'll do probably the silliest thing. He started off as an Instagram post that basically said, hey, this is Bonehead. He is mostly still, he wandered in here, and because he has no brain, he can't find the exit. So he's going to be around for a little while. So we can send him on adventures and have fun. Right? That's what it started off as. Well, in one of my classes, I decided to, for the whole semester, draw Bonehead. Every piece was a Bonehead piece. Had Bonehead in it. And so drawing him, basically doing a full illustration of Bonehead once a week for 14 weeks actually gave me some really fun opportunities to explore the character. I had to play with the lore behind him. That, well, does he has no brain, so does he feel emotion? Does he express emotion? And as I started to play with it, I was like, maybe he doesn't really express emotion, but he can feel it, but it's not very expressive. And as I was working with stuff like that, and I had him get a job at a bakery, and he has a pet goat named Murph, that my Instagram followers decided should be named Murph. As the lore expanded, he began to sound a lot like he had neurodivergence, which I have. I have severe ADHD, and a lot of my friends do. I mean, we're artists, we're all a little crazy, right? But it started to sound like that, and I realized that he could be sort of a character ambassador to help show people what it can be like, based off of mine and some of my friends' experiences, to live with neurodivergence. And it all stems from that idea of he doesn't maybe feel or show emotion. It's a common trait of neurodivergence that we don't feel or express emotion in the same circumstances as neurotypical people do. And from there on, I fell more and more in love with this character because he was a great way for me to express something that I was learning about myself and kind of reckoning with. So he became a favorite character to draw, and that's why that friend suggested that I rebrand myself as Bonehead. So that's what I did. So there you have it. There's a story of why there are 2 Boneheads. So sometimes you'll see, for the most part, you'll see the avatar Bonehead. And I'll joke that when I rebranded, I joked I am become Bonehead, because he was always kind of supposed to be an analog to a part of my life. And, well, it became a very, very kind of empowering thing for me. I am become Bonehead. And so I rebranded into Bonehead, and that's the expressive Bonehead. That's the one that, narrates the life series hero shooter videos, right? And he'll often express himself through facial expressions and little symbols around his head, that float about his head, right? Well, the character Bonehead, you can tell him apart by the generally a lack of facial expression, right? He'll show up, and his only sense of expressiveness really comes from the characters above his head. So if he has a question mark or an exclamation point, or if he's angry, it'll do the little star or whatever. But other than that, his face more or less remains the same. So there you go. There's how you can tell the difference. And also, the character Bonehead will be placed into situations. We'll refer to it as Bonehead's doing this, Bonehead's doing that. When it comes to Bonehead illustrations, which is me, that's when we'll talk about we're doing this, We're going to do this together. We're looking at this, or I did this art project, but I want to make it more we, so we're doing things together. So there you have it. That is the long-winded story of how I became the Bonehead and why there are two of them, and, well, why they are hard to tell apart. And as you can see here, we've now been down in the caves for about most of the day and most of the night, and the day's coming. And I've just been gathering some copper, some iron, a little bit of coal. I've been trying not to get too deep into the deep slate because you're less likely to find copper down there, and that's what I'm down here for. But all in all, so far, very, very fruitful. Contending with this water does make things a little bit difficult, but I managed to make it work one way or another, That was a funny moment where I accidentally placed my crafting bench instead of the torch. Now, let's see. I think this is the last bit of coal we gather up. Now, things get interesting here in just a second. Because as we start to creep towards day, I'm getting ready to leave, and let's see, where does it happen? I start roaming around just a little bit, because there's a couple of, I think I see some copper. Yep, I grabbed that. It's over here, and I think it's down here to the right. Yeah, I start to light things up. Yep, I see that gold. And I think I said I'm going to grab that iron and leave. I think that's what I said about here. So I was going to grab that iron and leave, but then that's right, I come up over here. I go to light up down here. That's where it is. And I start lighting up, and off to the side, you see, in a second, I find diamonds. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the luckiest world I've ever played in, the luckiest I've ever been. And as soon as I found those diamonds, it's like, well, we're not going right back up, because I wanted to get an iron pickaxe again and get those diamonds. So, this is the point where I decided to go ahead and say goodbye. So, this is the end of day 16. And at the beginning of day 17, we're going to get those diamonds, get the iron, and get out of the cave. Have a good one.